It's okay for you to be gay, but you must not be a girly gay, feminine in any way, because you're not a
Hmm.
girl. You can be a gay, but you have to be masculine. So there was a bit of me that thought, if I win International Mr. Leather, I've proved the bullies wrong.
Hello, my name is Kay Anderson, and this is Lost Spaces, the show that is all about lost queer spaces. Only it's not just about the physical space, it's about the people who drank there and danced there and loved there, and the memories that they have kept with them. Every week, I talk to a different person and I find out what relationship they had with a particular queer space and how it helped to shape the person that they've become. So, I will readily admit that I was a teeny tiny little bit naive when it came to the world of leather pageantry. Like, obviously, I knew that these leather competitions existed and that they were modeled loosely on beauty pageants and that kind of thing, but I kind of assumed that they just weren't all that serious. Like, I thought people showed up, it was a bit of a piss take and a laugh, they took a few pictures, posed a little, and then went home. But I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. And I quickly learned that when I sat down to talk about the lost London space, the Hoist, with life coach and former stand-up comedian John Pendal. Now, John also happens to be International Mr. Leather 2003, and so you can rest assured that he knows a thing or two about leather pageantry, as well as excessive instances, and more so than usual, of me saying, wow, when learning new information. You can also expect to hear in this episode the way that John meticulously prepared for the competition, his sex spreadsheet that records all of his shenanigans and escapades, and how he discovered his neurodiversity many years after competing for the title. And before we get into this episode, did you know that I have a weekly newsletter called Queer Word? It's a fun 5-minute read that shares a queer word, tells you what it means, and then gives you a bit of history or fun facts about it. If that sounds like something you are interested in, then why not subscribe? I will make sure that there is a link shared in the show notes to this episode. Right, let's find out about leather pageantry and the world that lies within. Cast your mind back to 8th of February 2003, and let's pretend that we're both on stage. I'm the person with the microphone, and I say, and the winner of Mr. Hoist 2003 is John Pendal. What is the first thing that goes through your mind?
I was definitely playing a role that night. I wasn't being myself, and I was still
Mm-hmm.
in character. And I thought, what would my character do if they won it? And I was thinking of Dead Poet Society, where Robin Williams gets the students to do a barbaric yaw. And so I did exactly the same winning IML, threw my arms in the air and did a barbaric yaw because I was masking to the hilt. I was pretending to be somebody else. And I thought, this is the right response for this situation.
But okay, so there wasn't like, yeah, I won. It was just like, okay, how do I perform this?
Yeah, because I was autistic and didn't know it. So my whole life was a performance. My whole life was trying to fit in and not be excluded. So everything I was doing with other people was trying to be the perfect family member, the perfect employee, the perfect Mr. Hoist, the perfect Mr. IML contestant. If I'm so good at this, you can't criticize me, I won't be bullied and I won't be excluded. And that was my preservation for getting through life.
So tell me about this character then. Who was he? Who is the perfect Mr. Hoist? Who is the perfect Mr. IML?
Well, entering Mr. Hoist, the character I named in my head was, can I say a swear on this?
Only if it's particularly explicit.
Okay, I called him Billy Big Bollocks. And I just thought, this is a guy who's got, big gonads, and he's going to go up and he's going to thrust his groin at the crowd. He's going to heckle the bar staff because the bar staff were heckling the contestants. So I would get in first and I would just own the room. And that was Billy Big Bollocks.
Is Billy Big Bollocks something that you can switch on at the drop of a hat, or is it something that you have to take time to transition into?
I think that night it was just in the moment through fear and panic because I hadn't gone to the Hoist expecting to enter.
Oh.
The prize money back in 2003, if you won Mr. Hoist, was £500, which, in today's money, easily over £1,000. To get that for what is really 30 seconds work. The Mr. Hoist, you got up on a bit of wood, balanced on some oil drums, you heckled the crowd for 30 seconds, you got off, and at the end of the night, you got a check. A lot of people were entering for the money, and I don't think the Hoist, if that person won, would ever see them again. So there might have been a little bit of panic on behalf of the owners that if somebody had travelled in from another part of the United Kingdom and got the money, would the club ever see them as a representative of the club for the year? They did prefer it if Mr. Hoist was a regular, somebody who would hand out free tequila at Christmas, free champagne at New Year's, because they would naturally be there anyway. So I can remember being asked...
Wait. So are you downplaying your win?
I'm not downplaying it because I did win, but I didn't go with the intention of entering.
Okay. So let's go back a step then. So you'd said that someone had approached you and been like, hey, can you enter? Well, how did that conversation go?
Trying to remember now. They probably just came over and went, it would be nice if there was a regular in the lineup. Could you just get up to either make up numbers or just make sure there's somebody here who represents the club all year round? And because I was sure I wasn't going to win, I volunteered to go first in the lineup. Because I thought if the person who goes up first doesn't have high energy, everybody will match that. But if the person who goes up first is Billy Big Bollocks and heckles the crowd and owns the room, everyone else will have to up their game. And one of them will win, but let me be the canary down the mine. I'll just get up there first and take the hit for the team. So I walked out on that little bit of wood that was balanced on 3 oil drums, and I pulled on my nipples and I grabbed my crotch and I insulted the bar staff, and I tried to make it look like my inner child wasn't screaming itself hoarse with panic and fear. I just tried to have the appearance of somebody larger than life, a living Tom of Finland drawing who didn't mind being up there. And then I got down and the others went up, and I thought, well, it'll go to somebody who's the classical leatherman, hairy chest, rides a motorbike, smokes a cigar, has muscles. I'm none of those things. It'll go to somebody who looks like Tom of Finland. And it didn't. That night it was a crowd vote. And a bit of me, I used to say when I was a comedian, it turns out it's quite easy to win Mr. Hoist if it's a crowd vote and you've already had sex with everyone in the room. I just wonder how much was the fact I had gone every week and I'd had sex with a lot of those men.
Wait, so now you're bragging about your sexual abilities?
Is it a brag to say you were the good time had by all? I don't think that's a brag.
Oh, why not? Because it could have been a bad time and then they wouldn't have voted for you.
I had some bad times. I had a spreadsheet where I rated every experience. I was autistic and didn't know it. And of course I had a spreadsheet.
Well, so was this the thing that you did immediately when you got home? You updated the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
How did you remember?
So it had columns. So the first column was city that I was in. Second column was month. Third column was year. Fourth column was identifying characteristic.
Of the person or of their penis?
Of the person. And then the last column was score out of 5. 5 being I saw stars. 4 being make the effort to see them again. 3 being do it again if they make the effort. 2, not even if they make the effort. 1, you wish nothing had happened. And 0, nothing
Cross
happened.
the street if you see them again. Well, how many times did you get to 5?
Good number. There was some talented people that I met.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's lucky. And did you create any graphs or charts from this spreadsheet?
I did, yes. There's one on my website, leatherlondonguide.com. It's a model of BDSM so that you can plot kinky sexuality in 3-dimensional space with an X, a Y, and a Z axis. And that came out of my data.
Did you have a heat map for countries as well?
No, but sometimes on planes to America, after I won International Mr. Leather, I would spend a journey with the airline in-flight magazine where they had all of the airports you could land at. And I would put rings around how many times at each city I'd had fun, just to see, that. And the next person on that plane would open up the map and go, why do certain cities have like 17 rings around them?
And why is he drawing a penis on the column here? Okay, let's go back to Billy Big Bollocks. So this night at the Hoist, when someone had asked you to perform, it's kind of nice, isn't it? Because you didn't have the time to overthink it.
Yeah.
Just go, yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to get on stage. I'm going to do this. And then who cares? Whatever. It's going to happen.
I just thought, I'll do it for the club. I'll take one for the team. I'll volunteer to go first. I'll be the biggest character up there I can be. And then I'm paying back a little bit of the gratitude I feel for the fact you've been running this venue where I've had so much fun.
Did Billy exist before this night?
The masking has always existed, but the role I've played, I don't think I was ever called to be that kind of exuberant ringmaster before Mr. Hoist. That is a very particular environment when you're in a sex club and holding up the sex. You're the opposite of a prostitute. So whatever you're doing needs to be better than 300 people having sex. So that was the first time I really had to turn the volume up to 11 and think, let's go wildly crazy, because otherwise they'll just resent you. We stopped our play to watch that.
Well, when you put it like that.
So, yeah, you did need to be something worth. I mean, there was once I was International Mr. Leather and they took me out to a place in Germany where there was like 1,000 men having sex on a battleship. They'd hired some kind of metal ex-wartime boat. And they announced that at some point in the evening, they would call me into the middle of the ship and I'd have to give a speech that would be translated into German. And I was well aware I'm about to stop 1,000 gay men having sex. Whatever I do needs to be worth that. And part of my IML prize was a Harley Davidson. And I decided to raffle it for charity. And I asked them, what's the line, who wants to win a Harley Davidson, in German? And they said, wer will einen Harley Davidson gewinnen? So I went in the middle of this boat and put the mic down and just shouted at the top of my voice, wer will einen Harley Davidson gewinnen? And 1,000 gay men heads came up and it's like, well, that was worth it. They forced me make a speech. And instead of coming out going something about being a title holder, it's like, who wants to win a Harley? That was worth stopping mid-shag. But that's what you're up against.
Okay, so let's stay in the Hoist for now. I do want to find out more about being a title holder and all that entailed. But, well, actually, my question isn't about the Hoist. It's about the masking. Do you have other specific characters that you would call upon in order to mask in different social settings? And do you have names for them?
That's a good question. That is a good question. No, I don't think I ever played a character as much as Mr. Hoist and the year that I was IML. I feel like I was definitely playing a character then. But the rest of the time, it was just trying to be this perfect version of yourself so that nobody could exclude you. And it meant being the perfect family member, the perfect employee, the perfect partner, saying yes to everybody, being a people pleaser, and then just being exhausted any second that you weren't being perfect. So I never did anything unless I knew I could do it well, because that would lead to bullying and exclusion. But if I could do it well, I had no choice but to do it to the best of my ability. It was very binary. It was 100% of effort or absolute refusal. So I've never learned to catch a ball. I've never learned to drive, because these are things you have to be bad at before you can be good. But if I thought I could be good at something, like when they said you're entering International Mr. Leather, I had 3 months to prepare. And I swear to you, every waking moment and possibly every sleeping moment, I was thinking about how to be the perfect IML contestant. I bored the pants off everyone around me because it was just one topic. I was obsessed with, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it to the best of my ability. There's no other way.
That's exhausting.
Yeah, it was.
Well, and so what is the perfect Mr. IML? Like, what are the ingredients? What did you need to think about? What did you need to do?
So they can ask you any question, the 9 judges. So I had to be versed on the whole leather scene. And this was back in the day before the internet, where everyone had a podcast and a website and everything was readily available.
Well, the internet existed in 2003. It just wasn't very good.
Yeah, we had Recon and we had Gaydar, but it was still rare for everybody to document every minute of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I hand coded my website my year as IML. I had to learn HTML to have a website that year. So I got on Recon and I said, has anyone been a previous IML judge? Can you share some questions that I can practice? I knew that in the interview, you've got 9 minutes with 9 judges. So for them all to have an answer, every question and answer must be within a minute. So any visitor to the house, I practiced. They could ask me any question on anything, and I had to answer and stop and smile within a minute.
Wow.
I went to a leather tailor, and I learned the difference between aniline and chromium tanned hides so that I could spot the difference in quality of hide. I learned how to lay out a pattern. I learned about splits, where the top layer is for clothing and the back layers are for car upholstery. I went to a sexual health clinic and I learned about the current diseases going through London, like drug-resistant strains of gonorrhea. I got the biographies of all the 9 judges, and then I researched any organisation that they'd either created or been on the board of, and I got the volunteer pack as if I was a volunteer for that organisation, so that if I met them in an elevator, we could talk, and I would effectively have done the training to be a volunteer in their organisation. I made sure I presented giant checks to charity and got pictures that went in the press. I wanted to get new leathers made, but then the Hoist told me, no, what you need is old leathers that you haven't bought yourself. Because one of the questions is usually, are you wearing anything that you didn't buy yourself? So it helps to be wearing history. So they did supply me with key older pieces that I could wear and unlimited Hoist t-shirts. So I only took out with me borrowed leathers and Hoist t-shirts and underwear. And that was it. That's all anybody saw me for the week. Because you are being judged every second. People clocked that I was on a plane in leather and landed at O'Hare in leather. That got back to the judges. There were other people who, in the afternoon rehearsals for the evening contest bits, would turn up in jeans and trainers. And then for the evening show in front of audiences, they'd turn up in their leathers and new boots and not be able to make the steps because they hadn't practiced in the outfit they were going to wear. I only had my leathers with me. I had no choice. I couldn't be seen in anything else.
John, this sounds exhausting.
Yeah, welcome to the life of someone who didn't know they were autistic.
Wow.
That's exactly what life is. Most people find out they're autistic because they've hit burnout and they go, what's happening to me?
But so this week at International Mr. Leather, I had thought maybe it was like a beauty pageant, but not as formalized and not as kind of heightened. But it sounds like it might be worse.
It is exactly like the film Miss Congeniality with Sandra Bullock.
Okay. And you're Sandra Bullock.
Oh, did I win Miss Congeniality? I don't know. No, I was probably one of the others, one of the other girls. So there is a physique round where you're in a jock strap. Ironically, the people who did better at that were the people who hated their own bodies. The bodybuilders who went out, who were proud of their bodies, looked on the video afterwards, because it was VHS tape back then, they looked really wooden and stiff because they just hit bodybuilding poses and nothing else happened. And the guys who were very large or the guys who were not very muscular, we would go out and compensate for the lack of belief in our physique. And you watch me, I'm like Tigger. I'm bouncing across the stage. I'm pulling on my nipples. I'm grabbing my crotch. I'm sticking my tongue out. I'm waving at all the audience. I'm smiling at the judges. I'm posing for the photographers. The whole thing is overcompensation. But when you look at the video, it looks normal. And for the bodybuilders who believed in themselves, they look a little bit wooden. So it actually helped in a way to be utterly hating that moment.
Well, and so the other categories.
So the other categories are, you get 10% of your marks from what you look like in leather. So there was one guy in my lineup who was wearing reproduction Tino of New York. And I was wearing the genuine Tino of New York. Like, you can't help but get full marks when you rock up wearing not exactly hand-me-downs, but key pieces of leather that have history from the past that you didn't just put down a credit card. So the leather was kind of sorted. The physique round was 10%. That was ironically sorted by me just being Tigger. There is a panel interview with the judges that I had just, with tunnel vision, prepped for 3 months.
And is that panel in front of an audience?
No, that's the only bit that's private. And then in the final show, the top 20 contestants get to make a speech. And the speech is timed. It's 90 seconds. And it counts down to 0. And at 0, the mic and the lights go off if you're still talking. So you have to time it to 90. So what you have to do is have a speech where at any point you can cut to your closing remarks and it still makes sense.
Oh, shit.
Now, everybody else walked out, started speaking, clock started counting down. They had 90 seconds and they left. I walked out, and it's a big West End theatre that's gone dark for Sunday, so we're taking it over for Sunday, but the stage is massive. And the mic's in the middle, and the microphone, they deliberately coiled the cable like 10 times down the mic stand to stop you from removing it. But I knew the clock didn't start until I started speaking. So I stood there, and I unwound 10 revolutions, and I looked at the microphone, took a breath in and smiled, and then didn't say anything, and they all laughed. And I went stage right to the furthest point of right to the wings. And I did the same. I looked at them and I made as if I was going to speak, and I didn't, and I smiled and they all laughed. Did it on the stage left, went back to the middle. I'd been mugging for a couple of minutes and got several laughs. The clock was still at 90. So when I started my speech, I had twice as long as anyone else out there.
And the next year they changed the rules.
I got through my introductory paragraph, 3 jokes, and I looked down and there was 20 seconds left, because when thousands of people are laughing at 3 jokes, that's basically a minute. So I just lost time. I jettisoned 80% of my speech. Most of what I'd written never got said. I did an opening remark, 3 jokes, and my closing, and I was off. And I think that was a perfect IML speech of about 150 words. Because that's really all you get to say if you're getting responses from the crowd.
Well, but what, like, did you get guidance on what to talk about, or was it just talk about anything for 90 seconds?
I did get guidance and I ignored it. Because at the Hoist, they made me go every Friday for a pre-meeting before the club opened. And we went through everything. And they told me what, they gave me a stack of posters and they wanted me to wallpaper the lifts with the posters in the hotel, and I didn't. Instead, I stood in the foyer of the hotel and I signed them for people. I handed them out with signatures. I made it more personal. So there was some advice from the Hoist. I did the opposite.
But they were like your pageant coaches.
Yeah, they were Michael Caine. Yes. There was one piece of advice they gave me that I did take. They said, "Can you talk into the microphone?" I went, "Yeah, I've been doing this for ages. I can talk into a mic." And I held the microphone in front of my chest, so it's pointing up into my mouth. And they went, "No, that is not how a leatherman holds a microphone. Get your elbow up to 90 degrees, level with your shoulder, and you hold it as if it's a cigar. So it's coming out the side of your mouth. It's not down in front of your chest, elbow up, mic to the side, your Billy Big Bollocks. You're basically smoking a cigar. It happens to be a microphone."
But no one smokes a cigar like that, do they? With their elbow
if
up.
If they're a leatherman.
Doesn't seem practical.
Yeah. Imagine you're in a truck and you've got your elbow on the window and you're looking over and going, "Hey, boy, want to come in my truck?" Like that kind of machismo. So I did hold the microphone up with my elbow out. That's one piece of advice I took from them that turned out to look quite good on the video afterwards.
And so was that all the categories? Have we covered them all?
Yeah, I mean, they have official scored categories, but unofficially, every single thing you do is get it back to the judges. So you may feel that there are timed portions and times you're off the clock, but the reality is you are never off the clock. even flying into the city and landing at the airport, will get back to the judges.
How ridiculous. And so were you protected by the fact that you were always on?
So in one sense, being autistic meant a lot of it was more traumatic for me than other people, because there was sensory overwhelm and I wasn't coping. But on another hand, there is a strength in being autistic in that it gives you hyper focus. Some people call it tunnel vision, some people call it monotropism, but there is this ability just to laser in and be able to concentrate on one thing for 3 months or one thing for 5 days. And also, if you line 60 men up on stage and you ask a panel of judges, pick out the man who stands out and send them around the world for a year, one way of standing out is by being neurodivergent. Nowadays, one way of standing out could be by being trans or non-binary. But back in the day when I was very definitely benefiting from white privilege, it was mostly white cisgender men. So one way for me to stand out was by being neurodivergent. Fortunately, times have moved on, and now it's a little bit more acceptable for other kinds of people to be on that stage.
But let's just explore this, what you've just said, a bit more. Are you saying that the judges would have identified that in you?
I've been a judge as well. The year after you win, you go back as a judge. And there's 60 men in front of you. And the first 4 days, I think it's slightly less now. I think they've shortened it. But in my day, it was a 5-day event. So the first 4 days, all you're really looking to do is sort those 60 people into 3 thirds. You don't have to rank them. So 1/3, the bottom third, are people you've caught out in a lie. Either they padded their CV, they claimed to be a member of a leather club and they weren't, or they've told an untruth in some way. They claim to have won a leather title, but they never actually ran for it. So there's like 20 people down the bottom who get caught out in some untruth. There's 20 in the middle who say nothing inoffensive, but they say nothing interesting either. They give the politically correct answer to everything. And you go, in 7 years' time, come back. But right now, you still strike me as a bit too green. And then there's 20 people who give an interesting answer. And they're the ones you want to hear more from. They're the ones who get to go on and give a speech. So I think part of my intensity was getting me into that top 20 where they could go, let's hear a speech from him.
What a world. What a world that I've been totally sheltered from. Obviously I knew that it existed, but I didn't know it was this intense. I thought people just showed up and were like, hey, look at me, I'm burly.
There are some contests like that. There are some where you do, you twirl a ribbon or
tweak your nipples.
I mean, the Mr. Hoist was 30 seconds. I had to stop people having sex for 30 seconds and I got a title. So there's all different kinds of titles in the leather community. Some you polish boots for. IML is its own particular thing because the winner has a job for a year. So it's not just a title, it's a job interview.
Wow. Okay, I'm aware we veered a long way away from the Hoist, so let's go back. So after getting this title of Mr. Hoist, what changed?
Then you have the come to Jesus call with the owners, because the owners of the bar took me into the office and went, look, you have now qualified for International Mr. Leather if you want to go. But for us, it's not that you have to make the cut and be in the top 20. If you're representing the Hoist, we expect you to be top 10. And the last few Mr. Hoists have been, I believe, 5th, 7th and 3rd out of 60. So the honor of the club is here. We are not going to send you if you're just going to rock up there, have sex for 5 days and come back and trash our reputation at that contest. It was a big deal. So I had to faithfully promise that if I went in for it, I would give it my all. They obviously didn't know who they were talking to. But yeah, you have the come to Jesus chat in the office as well. I remember that.
It's a bit like Eurovision.
If I think in subsequent years, if somebody wasn't going to take it seriously, they were still willing for you to go to IML, just not enter. If what you want is just to be in that hotel for 5 days, go with our blessing, but only enter International Mr. Leather if you're actually going to take this seriously.
And we won't give you T-shirts to take because we don't want to be associated with you.
I'm fairly sure the Hoist gave out T-shirts like candy, because for them it was just a laugh that you would go to another city and everyone in the leather bar was wearing a Hoist London T-shirt. Great branding.
Okay, so in terms of after that night, so after you had the title of Mr. Hoist, What changed for
Yeah.
you when you went to the Hoist?
I mean, on the one hand, it made it almost impossible for me to go anywhere else.
Oh,
If I went to Backstreet, people would have gone, why is Mr. Hoist, International Mr. Leather, at Backstreet? So I tend to stick to the Hoist, but it also meant like you couldn't get so drunk you were crawling out the club. So there was an element that this is my home now, but also I'm still on show.
yeah. Did your pulling power go significantly up?
In a way. So I liken IML to a factory that makes one sausage a year. And if you were a fan of sausages, you were a prized commodity because only one sausage a year. So if what you want is to have sex with an international Mr. Leather, I'm suddenly a very attractive proposition.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people in the world who are vegan, vegetarian, or don't like sausage.
Well, what's in this sausage? I might need a bit more information.
Chopped
here.
meat. Chopped meat. But basically, that you meet an awful lot of people who then are very happy to tell you why they don't like you or your title. Perhaps they don't like the concept of title holding in a leather community that should be quite butch, and this is more miscongeniality. They find that offensive. It might be that they had a friend who entered and didn't win. There can be lots of reasons why people have a grudge against you. Perhaps they met a previous international Mr. Leather who was up themselves and they assume you will be. Maybe they met you when you were having an off night. You were drunk and jet lagged and just not at your best, and you said some inexcusable things due to free alcohol. You know, there can be lots of reasons why people are put off by you.
And they will tell you without you soliciting that information.
Yeah, they're very willing to come up and just, they will queue up to tell you why being a title holder is wrong, why you are wrong, why their friend should have won. You start meeting a lot of people like that. I found a home in the kink community where there was more anonymity. You know, like if you do pup play, there was only once I was ever doing puppy play and I was on all fours and somebody pointed into the mosh pit and went, oh, look, there's International Mr. Leather. And I got up on 2 feet and walked out. So I just thought, you've spoiled the illusion there. I was a puppy for a moment and I wasn't International Mr. Leather. So I tended to go places where they valued skills greater than titles. And then I found my people.
Oh, skills.
Yeah. So if you want somebody to stick needles in you, they better be good at it.
Oh, okay.
Or they can do some harm.
Yes, that's a good
Like
point.
if you want somebody to set fire to you, they better be good at it. So I tend to be drawn to events where they liked skill-based activities rather than you rocking up and just having a title on your back.
Yeah. But so coupled with that, people being very critical and just unnecessarily rude, surely there would be people that were like, oh, I want to get with you because I want to have bragging rights that I've got with Mr. IML.
Yes. And if they were my type, I definitely took advantage of that. And if they weren't my type, I unfortunately had somewhere else I had to be. My time was not my own. At the IML office, they gave me a couple of hand signals so that if other people who knew those hand signals were at an event, I could still communicate. So one was if you're holding a drink and you start taking a finger around the rim of the glass, that means, can somebody come over and help me? I need assistance. And if you squeeze somebody's hand who knew what that meant, it meant, I would like you to drag me away, but I want to pretend that I want to stay. And the deal was you always had somebody at every event who knew some of these hand signals. So you were never truly on your own. In other words, if you got your elbow squeezed, it meant watch what you're saying. This person is either a journalist or they have an axe to grind against IML. You don't need to leave, but just mind what you're saying. So we had these hand signals, and it did mean there was a lot of occasions I could really pretend that I absolutely wanted to have sex with the person who wanted to have sex with me. But sadly, I was being called away because someone had promised an interview. You know, you could get out of it without offending people.
Wow. You had like a whole posse around you.
Yeah. I had my A team, my B team, and my C team. So the A team are the people who you can rely on, less than 10, but will always have your back. Because as an IML, you can't really take pops back at people who are attacking you unless you're so drunk you have no self-control.
But surely that's the macho thing to do, right? Like to be like, "Meow, meow, meow." Did I sound really macho then?
When I was IML, It was much more political, and actually you were just meant to take it on the chin, but have one of your A team deal with it. The B team is the great unwashed. That's
Wow.
95% of people you meet. You don't know if they're good or bad. They're just the general public. The C team are people who have a known grievance against IML and have made it clear they are anti IML. Perhaps they were previously a judge and they got fired. They previously had a contestant who they felt was hard done by. And the idea was throughout your year, you knew if it was a success, if everyone got asked, which team do you think you're in, A, B, or C? If everyone you met felt they were in your A team, you'd had a good year.
Do you still do it? Are you categorizing me as being in your A, B, or C team?
Oh, you're my A team.
Oh, you're just saying that, but like,
No, but that's my job, to make everybody feel like they're in my A team. That's the job. You don't tell somebody on the C team they're in your C team.
Okay. So I'm not actually in your A team. You're just telling me I'm in your A team in order to make me feel comfortable. Is that what you're saying?
The job of an IML is to make everybody feel like they're number one in your life in that moment. Look, I had some people who traveled 3 states to see me, queued up 2 hours to shake my hand. And this was in the days before HIV medication was as successful as it is now. And one guy shook my hand and said, I'm down to my last 17 T cells and I wanted to meet you. How can you not give that person your all in that moment? That's the job.
Yeah, absolutely. But the question I'm asking is like, have you carried on applying that set of rules to people throughout your life? Or was that something that was specific to that period of time?
That was very specific for a year. The second I had a step down, and the first person who came up and was bitchy to me, I remember I was very bitchy back, and they acted like I'd slapped them. They weren't expecting it.
Oh.
Now, I don't want to be a complete hypocrite. There will be people who contact you and say, John was bitchy during his year. And I did have quite an alcohol. I was self-medicating with alcohol. So there were moments where I lost control, and I do apologize to those people.
All of them? All of them?
Yeah.
Surely there's one person that you're like, nah, I'm not sorry. Fuck you.
I just don't see the issue in letting it go and moving on.
Okay.
And if what they need to move on and let it go is for me to apologize, I'll do that. It doesn't cost me anything to say, I drank too much, I was rude, really sorry.
Okay. So just for the record, everyone, John is far less petty than I am. So what was it like then at the end of that year when you handed over the title and you were no longer Mr. IML and there was presumably you went back to the way life was before? What was that come down like?
It's tough because winning IML is like being shot out of a cannon at the circus and landing in a net, but you're in the air for 12 months and you don't land till they announce the name of the next one. And as soon as the next one, in my case, Jason Hendrick's name got called, the entire circus of 10,000 people who for a year have been telling you you are a prize sausage runs off after the next sausage. And you walk back to the hotel with your luggage with, if you're lucky, 1 or 2 friends, having seen the entire community just run after the next IML. And you have to be able to process the come down because it is hard. And one piece of advice I was given was, if you want to continue this work, if you want to keep going to events and being a presenter and doing the stuff you've been doing, don't stop. Because if you announce to the community, I need a break, they'll just assume you've left. So before my step down, I booked in that I would teach some workshops at Minneapolis Leather Pride in June that year. And then I had another event in August, and I just kept going. And I worked through the grief and the depression and the Band-Aid being ripped off and all of that. They've all left me and they said they were my friend. I just worked through it. And I kept going to events and presenting so that by the time I was ready to present, I still had people coming to me because they knew I was still doing it. And I think for some of the IMLs who legitimately have said, I just need a few months off, I found it really difficult then to pick back up.
Okay, I feel like I've said a number of times during this conversation, let's go back to the Hoist, but I'm going to say it again. Let's go back to the Hoist. Okay. Do you remember hearing about it closing?
Yes.
What was that like? How did that feel?
I understood it, but it was heartbreaking because they made me. Like in the biography of my life, I have to thank the Hoist for the direction it took. If I hadn't walked into that club, I can't imagine what my life would look like now. I nearly didn't stay. The first night I ever went, I tried to leave within 20 minutes because I was so scared that I turned up and I checked my stuff in and I had little denim cutoffs. And I think I might have had a leather waistcoat, but I basically had no other leather on me but a waistcoat and little denim shorts. And I went in, and to what felt like to me, I was surrounded by 6'7" Terminators. Everybody seemed to be in full leather and rubber with Muir caps and beards and cigars and hairy chests and hubbub. And I lasted about 20 minutes. And it's what I had always wanted, was to be in that room. And it absolutely, I've never felt so lonely and excluded because I didn't know anyone and I didn't look like them and I didn't feel like I deserved to be there. And I tried to leave. And somebody who was in the foyer was checking their clothes in, saw me looking quite upset and said, "Hey, what's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, I've always wanted to come here, but I don't fit in." And he said, "Come with me." And he walked me back in and he gave me a little pep talk that's on my website. Everything he told me, I've put on leatherlondonguy.com. And it was things like, imagine you have left the coat hanger in your shirt. So that pushes your shoulders back. You can't roll your shoulders forward. Don't hold your drink high because scared people hide behind a pint. What you want to do is have one thumb through a belt loop and the other hand with the drink on your thigh. And put one foot up against the wall so that your thigh's at an angle. Have the drink there and the other thumb in a belt loop. Turn and face the center of the room because shy people always seem to turn their shoulders away from the action. Make sure your nipples are pointing towards the center of the action. He basically moved me into position like a mannequin and went, "Stay there." And then he moved a few feet away and watched. And within seconds, somebody came over and started touching me up and playing with me. History's written. But if it wasn't for him, I'd have left. So I have to thank him too. There's a few key people who really...
Do you know who he
butterfly
is?
effect.
Or did you never see him again?
Oh, knowing me, I'm fairly sure we would have had sex more than once out of gratitude. You know, I owed him.
Oh, gratitude sex.
In my head.
Brilliant.
I can tell you something awful, but I don't know if I should say it publicly.
Well, you have to say it now that you've said that.
In my early 20s, I had the ability to repeat a performance. So sometimes first performance of the night would be the gratitude and the second performance would be with the person I actually wanted. So for instance, if we'd gone back in a black cab to somebody's house and the black cab driver wanted to join in, I might volunteer to go first with the driver. And then when they'd left because they were satisfied, then do what I actually wanted with the person I'd gone back with because I had the ability to do things more than once, if that makes sense. I have this theory that in your 20s, you have sex before you go to sleep. So you pull at the club or you have sex in the club, but you basically do the sex and then you do the sleep. And in your 30s, you might pull and you take them back and you go, "Should we go to sleep now? Because it's like 3 a.m. and we'll do sex when we wake up." And then in your 40s and 50s, or certainly in your 50s, you both have to take the afternoon off work and you have to make sure you've had enough sleep and enough to eat and the cats are shut out the bedroom and you're playing hooky from work and then you can do it like mid-afternoon. But certainly in my 20s, I could have had a sleepless night and been fine.
Hang on. Why were you sleeping with this black cab driver out of some... Like, is it to get out of paying for the black cab or is it...
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, that makes sense.
So it's a combination of... I'm young, don't have the money for the cab. He's offering, like, if do me and you get it free. But also, if you're autistic and you don't know it, you're probably a chronic people pleaser. That's your defense. That's your place of safety. If I just do what everybody asks of me, I can be in this club.
Yeah.
So if you're autistic and you don't know it, you're probably saying yes to everyone, regardless of whether it's very safe or right for you, just because that's your way of getting through life. I'll just say yes. So I said yes, basically to everything. Will you enter Mr. Hoist? Yes, people pleasing. Will you run for IML and give it your all? Yes, people pleasing. It's something that you have to unpack when you work out you are autistic and they talk about unmasking. separate to unmasking, is getting a handle on people pleasing, because it will be so embedded in you just to say
Yeah.
yes.
But so, okay, let's just pick at what you've just said. You've recognized that being the title holder, winning Mr. IML, changed your life. But are you also saying that it wasn't actually something that you wanted to do? You were doing it because you were people pleasing?
I think there's nuance here. I think I wanted the idea of it. I liked the idea of it. The practical side of it, will you actually travel, live out of a suitcase, wear leather for a year? There was a lot I struggled with.
Oh, yeah, that leather must have stunk.
But when I went to school at 3 or 4 years old, before we knew what sexuality was, we knew what gender was. And I didn't want to go out and play football with the boys. I found them very rough and I couldn't kick a ball. I did want to sit indoors with the girls and play in the doll's house. So they called me a girl. Kids, until we discovered sexuality, knew I was different. I wasn't presenting as masculine, and they would call me a girl. And so I think I had gender dysphoria as a cisgendered person because the world was telling me I was a girl and I knew I wasn't. I knew I was a boy. I just wasn't a boy who climbed trees and played football. So when I finally came out as gay, there was a bit of my head that went, it's okay for you to be gay, but you must not be a girly gay, feminine in any way, because you're not a girl. You can be a gay, but you have to be masculine. So there was a bit of me that thought, if I win International Mr. Leather, I've proved the bullies wrong. Now, the irony is, I've since watched Miss Congeniality. I've realised dragging up in leather is not a masculine thing. As for some guys it is. For some guys it's still masculine, but I still see it as, another form of drag for me. But there was a big part of me that went, I've proved the bullies wrong. So I loved the theory of it. I loved the feeling of finally being accepted. They can't kick me out of the community now because I've got this. But in practical terms, I think the year gave me a lot of trauma. A lot of things happened to me that didn't sit right with my body.
Yeah, and all in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and I can't blame anyone else for that. I hadn't worked out I was autistic and I didn't explain it to anyone. I did spend a lot of my year telling anyone who would listen that I felt broken. That seemed to be a recurring conversation with anyone who'd listen. So I think the signs were there. I think telling people you feel broken, being exhausted, self-medicating with alcohol, the signs were there that I was struggling, but none of us really had the vocabulary to go, by the way, mate, are you autistic?
Yeah.
I think you might be.
Okay. So I'm aware that we haven't actually got to the bottom of the question about how it felt when you found out that the Hoist closed.
Oh, grief. Yeah. I'm going to attempt a metaphor, which is really difficult for me because I'm quite literal. But say there was somebody you were married to and you're not married to them anymore, but you found out they've passed. There's a bit of you that goes, they made me happy for a time. We might not still be together, but, we were married. It was a marriage. They changed my life. I'm insanely grateful.
And sticking with that thought, what did the Hoist teach you about yourself?
It was the third of 4 epiphanies. So the first 20 years of my life, I truly, honestly believed I was heterosexual because I was raised in a church where there was no other option. Gay wasn't even a possibility. So I assumed for the first 20 years of my life that I was straight and other straight men were like me, fancied other men. That's what being straight was. And then in my 20s had this epiphany that I'm gay, met a gay guy, realized like, okay, this is my second identity. I'm going to be gay. And I tried it for 10 years and I was rubbish at it. I was terrible at vanilla sex. I was terrible in vanilla gay bars. There's usually a drag queen, a mirror ball, a smoke machine, a dance floor, flashing lights, loud noise. I was in sensory overwhelm. I was always waiting for the magic to start and I couldn't work out why I still didn't fit in. So then my third identity was finding the Hoist, realizing I liked leather and kink. And although I struggled with aspects of being a title holder, the opportunities it provided me, the contacts in my address book, the events I got to go to, It was like having the golden ticket in Willy Wonka Chocolate Factory. Like, I got to try all the gobstoppers for a year. It was such an education. That epiphany that I'm kinky. And then in my 40s in therapy, discover I'm autistic. And now I get to look at everything through this lens of, are you actually those things, or are you only those things because you're autistic? And so now I think of my identity as neurokinky, because I can't separate neurodivergence from kinkiness. They're the same. So, yeah, I think that the Hoist is like that third phase of my life when I went, this is my home, leather and kink. And I'll do this professionally for as long as I can make people pay for me.
If you enjoyed hearing John's story and his antics and shenanigans that he got up to as International Mr. Leather, then why not reach out to him on social media and let him know? You can find him on Instagram at johnpendal.coach. And you can also find him on his personal website, johnpendal.com, or on the guide to London's leather and bear scenes that he mentioned in the episode at leatherlondonguide.com. And as always, I'll make sure to share details in the show notes for this episode. Whilst you're saying hello and reaching out to people, why not reach out to me? I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Lost Spaces Pod. As always, I would appreciate if you took the time to review, subscribe, tell a friend, or just send good wishes out into the atmosphere for this here little podcast. My name's Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.